My nephew through marriage is a crazy little shit. Once, the entire family was playing hide and seek. He was 9. He didn't like where I hid, so he flew into a rage. He tried to hit me. I grabbed his wrist and I twisted it just enough to subdue him. He screamed like a maniac. I released him. He then ran into another room, stating that he needed to get his Nerf gun to shoot me because he shoots people when he's mad. I look at my sister-in-law and said, "Seriously, you're okay with this?" Her response was that his rage was my fault, and that I had no right to touch him, and that I should have just let him hit me since he's only a boy. I told her quite firmly that if her crazy little bastard ever even gave the appearance of causing harm to one of my children, that I would put him down like a rabid dog. Fortunately, everyone else present told her that she was wrong, and that her kid was nuts, and that this was a serious red flag. Flash forward 2 years. The kid is still crazy, but that's everyone else's problem because he's still just a boy. I'm staying at their house. Things have mostly settled from that prior incident. At around 4:30 in the morning, I find myself awake. I don't want to get up and wake everyone else, so I just lie there and meditate, I guess. At around 5:20, the door opens. Thinking it's my kids, who were very young at the time and still came to get us early, I just kind of glance up. Then I notice that it's the nephew, and he's holding an AR-15. My fight-or-flight response is triggered. My heart is pounding, and I'm basically in survival mode. I wait. He creeps past the foot of my bed, walks up to the side of the bed, and raises the rifle up to the point that the muzzle is at my face. I reached up, I grabbed the muzzle, and I pushed it back as hard as I could, sending the back of the rifle into the little shit's face. His nose is bleeding, he's crying, and he's screaming about how he's gonna kill me, how I'm dead, etc. Now everyone is awake. The lights are turned on, and I can see that it's a fake rifle made to look like a real one. Apparently this little shit was planning to stick the muzzle in my face and pull the trigger to scare the crap out of me with flashing lights and electric gun sounds. I feel somewhat torn. On one hand, I just broke an 11-year-old's nose for playing with a fake gun. On the other hand, he had all these signs that he was dangerous, and what he was doing was just super creepy, whether or not he was already a little psycho or not. My sister-in-law is pissed. Her chosen narrative is that I'm clearly mentally unstable and how I'm a lunatic who is a danger to all children. She calls the cops. She insists, despite the protests of all of my family members, including my wife. She insists that she's having me arrested and charged with child abuse for hitting a boy for playing with his toys. The police arrive. The interviews take basically the whole day. I'm a little worried about getting arrested. Fortunately, it didn't play out that way. This little shit wasn't just crazy around me. He was crazy everywhere else, and he had been for years. The police had a file on him because the school was required to call the police every time he threatened a school shooting, which was often. I laid out my version of events like I did here. They let me go home, and a week later a detective called me to let me know that there will be no charges filed against me. He also told me that his interview with my nephew was chilling, and that he hopes my sister-in-law pulls her head out of her ass and gets the shit some help. I told him that she won't ever get him some help, and when he's 30 years old and on trial, she'll still be crying and saying that he's just a boy. Hopefully he doesn't hurt anyone, but I know the odds are stacked against that hope. I now refuse to stay at their house if we are in town. We stay in a hotel instead. He is never allowed to be alone with either of my kids. He is also never allowed in my house since he was caught trying to steal a pocket knife, which he said he needed for surgery on the family cat. I was out camping with 2 friends this one time, and a game warden came across our campsite about an hour after dark. This is in the middle of the mountains of Tennessee, and we knew this area very well. including the fact that we had never seen one of these guys just appear like this. He didn't announce himself that he was approaching, he had no flashlight. We just had a fire going and we heard someone approaching. We were friendly to him and he said that he was just doing a patrol, but I had a very, very wrong feeling about this guy. When I looked at my friends afterwards, they both shot me a very concerned look. When we were sure he was out of earshot, we spoke briefly about how we were all sure he wasn't right, and we discussed what we should do. We kept the fire going that night, and we made sure to stay up shifts around the fire as opposed to our tents and hammocks. One of my friends grabbed his pistol, I had my bowie knife, and the other one kept our hatchet within grabbing distance. We set up our lanterns in a broader area so that we can see further, and we picked different sides of the fire to sit on. We kept our eyes and ears open all night. We talked and laughed like there was nothing wrong, but like how any of us were going to sleep. Throughout the whole night we heard noises and leaves shifting. Nothing abnormal because, animals, but we were still on edge. Sometime between 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, though, we heard a different type of rustling, which was more consistent with a set of 2 legs rather than a set of 4, and it circled our area a few times, and then walked away. It was that moment where every hair on your body stands up. Sure enough, a moment later, we heard louder footsteps approaching. Wouldn't you know, it was that same warden guy. When he got to us, he said,
"Well, aren't you boys just up a little late?"
We gave some bullshit excuse about all of us being insomniacs, which was pretty true for that night. He talked a bit longer and he asked us how long we thought we would be up. We just said until we get tired. He gave an uneasy smile and looked like he was thinking hard about something. I don't think he liked that none of us turned our backs on him or really even looked away. He told us he was going to head back to his truck and head back down the mountain soon, and for us to have a good night. We're in the middle of fucking nowhere. We would have heard any vehicle a mile away. He walked off and there was no noise near us at all. We heard more noises in the night we were suspicious of, but nothing came of it. Eventually, it sounded like a four-wheeler was driving off as sunrise was getting ready to start. The first thing we did that morning was go to the nearest ranger station that we knew of, and we brought this guy up. Nobody with that name or who looked like the man was employed in that county. It was the middle of the night. I was awake because I was expecting company. And then I heard a knock on the door. So I answered the door, and I kept the security screen door closed, and there were 2 police officers standing there. They were asking to come in and get access to my backyard because there was a prowler reported. They looked legit, and there was a car that looked like a police car in the driveway. But I got a bad feeling about them. I can't really explain it, but something in the back of my mind was telling me that something was wrong. So I asked for their names, and I told them to wait a minute while I called the station to confirm who they said they were. The one doing all the talking went batshit and tried to push the screen door open. I slammed the front door closed and called the police. The fake police disappeared, and about a minute later, the actual real police arrived. They left a car parked outside my house, and they picked up the 2 men a couple of streets away. This happened when I went to a specific church. People in the church kept urging me to consider dating a fellow church member. He was divorced and was active in the youth groups. He took pictures of all their events and practices for the newsletter. But he always just creeped me out. He also coached the teenagers in his specialized sporting event. He had a gym room in his house, and they would meet him there, and he had a place where they could change into their workout clothes. Well, it turns out that he was blackmailing the teenage girls with photos that he was taking of them while they were changing. He would threaten the girls, telling them that he would tell people that they posed for him unless they would give him more pictures. Some of the girls went to their parents. I don't remember the details because I no longer went to that church, but he did end up getting convicted and sent to prison because of it. This happened in my freshman year of college. A friend and I were driving across town and he stopped for gas. It wasn't a dangerous part of town or anything. It was just a quiet gas station with an old Buick out front. Then this feeling came over me. This feeling of, we need to get out of here. I tried to shake the feeling by making a joke. My friend immediately gunned it out of there without filling up. He said he had the same feeling, and me bringing it up too scared the shit out of him. On the way home, there were about 20 police cars outside. It turns out some guy had shot 2 people in a carjacking and robbery. The Buick was the car he stole.